It's a fine foggy night tonight, and I doubt if anyone has ever told you of the marvelous fogs we have in Aberdeen.
Eugene.
Bakersfield.
Los Angeles.
San Francisco.
He wasn't giving my props in Oaktown.
Portland.
Los Angeles.
Los Angeles, California.
San Francisco.
San Francisco.
You gotta find your Irvine.
Irvine?
Hanford.
Eugene.
Seattle.
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 Sacramento.
Fresno.
We're going to Vancouver.
Modesto, California.
San Diego.
Chino.
You know, there might be an opening for a manager in Visalia next spring.
Yakima, right?
Vallejo, California, the V.
Welcome, Chip Moore, to the West Coast Sojourn. Lev Anderson, you happy to see Chip?
Yes, I'm very happy to see Chip. We had a conversation with Chip earlier that was interrupted by technical difficulties, but we were having a good time. So it's good to see you again, Chip.
Yeah, we'll just run it back and do it again.
Yeah.
It's interesting because we recorded earlier today a session with an activist from Minneapolis whose perspective was, from right there in the neighborhood. But I think what's interesting to talk to you now, because you have a sort of a 20,000-foot perspective on a lot of the law enforcement issues. And before we get into all that stuff, I wanted to talk about you back in the day. Were you legit? Were you legit when I met you? How legit were you? This is like 2018. 2018.
Yeah, allegedly, I was good, allegedly, but, the market and the way that everything was developing, and we 2018 or 2017 even. We might have been 2017.
Okay.
Yeah, that's when we first linked up. So, there's a lot of gray areas, and that's a lot of the work I did. I was in the market and present when it was all the way black, when it was gray. That's when I thought that we had the California potential and possibilities to do everything and anything within the market. And then when the market went white, figuratively and literally,
Is that a thing people say? I've never heard that before. It went white.
The white market, yeah, people from my neck of the woods, people that had my kind of experience in cannabis and how we came up. Like, I've done this I used to do this for over 30 years, and I built brands. I was a disruptor in the industry. I pride myself on being, in a lot of the rooms I was at, I was the only African American. I was in there with the characters who were moving big weight and doing big things. And I knew that I wanted to have more people who looked like me, who had been in the industry for generations and have taken the risks and have taken, honestly, the brunt of police enforcement, of law enforcement, of all the things that come around for this industry. I was the one who got up there and made it into those rooms. And I'm not forgetting about, the shoulders I stand on, the feet that I sat at and I listened to, the characters who, let me in those rooms and got my foot in the door. I was all important. And, that's how I built my brand and my reputation, is I didn't take no for an answer. And I'd still the same thing. I'm just in a different field now.
And now it's the white market. So can you give us a little bit more detail on, like, what's the difference now? I mean, obviously, was it like black market even when, after stuff was legalized? I can't remember when legalization hit California.
2018 is when it went down.
Okay.
And the funny thing was, that was the last day before complete legalization. It was still the gray market.
The gray market, right.
Yeah, me and a lot of old school veterans, radicals of this industry, we came together to build out the Oakland Cup. And we were saying, like, this is the last day. We're going to make sure that every farmer has a shot. We had, we had participants from all over California. We had judges, of high esteem that had come in and, put this together with, friends of mine who have since passed, but Rick Fromer, who was one of the best and most accomplished cannabis buyers for Harborside back in the day, had the best nose in the game, and taught me a lot of what I know now about the plant. Like, we called every favor in. We built the Oakland Cup. And one of the first things that the Bureau of Cannabis Control did was shut down our event. So one of their official acts, and they did. You know, they called me up. They used my nickname, so I know it wasn't. They didn't even use my government name. They were like, "Hey, Chip, you can't do this. You're gonna have to shut this down, and you can't have this Oakland Cup." And it cost me everything. I lost everything about it. But at the same time, was the market different? Yes, there was a lot of the players that had been established, that had been trying to develop good policy and work with stakeholders and communities. A lot of those cats got pushed aside. It was not only survival of the fittest, it was who's your champion, who's your advocate, you know, who's going to bring in the money for you to not just work on this project, but you're going to have 2 or 3 or 4 more. Back in the day, everybody tried to get vertically integrated. Everybody wanted to go from seed to sale, and everybody was trying to cut out their neighbor. And that wasn't the community, the cannabis community that I had known. You know, when I got out here in California from my travels, there was growers that let me in, that showed me the way, that showed me the game and the history and the legacy behind it. It's just different. You know, and I understand that. You know, corporate characters were always coming in one way or another into the cannabis industry. Just now it's more regulated, but they've always been there.
Well, let me ask
We've always
you,
had chads.
I'm very curious. You mentioned the DCC, cannabis control, that department in California. Yesterday, I just happened to run into Alex Halpern from Weed Week, and we
No,
were,
Alex.
yeah, okay. He was telling me that an upcoming piece, maybe it'll come out by the time this drops, but is going to be on Nicole Elliott, the director of cannabis control, who oversaw a lot of the development of the industry here in the past 7 or so years. But I, before I tell you my perspective on it, I would love to hear how you think she did as a czar.
As a czar, no, hey, if you get in this industry and you made your way, no disrespect, I give you all your flowers, literally and figuratively. So I'm not one to judge how one person comes in and does this job. What I would want to say is, let's reflect on when it started, the Bureau of Cannabis Control, now it's the DCC. How does this organization, this institution, does it push our industry forward? Is it really working in the best interest of all Californians? That should be the first piece of the industry, of the people who are trying to grow it. You know, we had a brain drain in California. We lost our best growers, we lost our best geneticists, our best engineers, because California and overregulation, overtaxing destroyed the industry. So that's where I would start. If you know, you're like, hey, how can we make this better? We have to rework and revamp the system. We've done it for everybody when they're like, oh, I'm an internet entrepreneur, or I'm, you know, data driven, this guy. But we let all of the gates down and all the barriers for those industries to build. So what's happening here? You know, so my first thing would be, yes, regulation is important. I'm all about transparency and accountability. You know, those are my stalwart things. However, you know, you've got to build the industry. You got to make sure it's not breakable. Right now, we're broken. You know,
Yeah.
there's a lot of companies that, you know, I know are about to go down that you guys probably haven't heard yet. And, you know, and you guys probably have heard. But yeah, there's borrowed time out here on a lot of these characters. Everyone's calling their money in. And so for the last 6 to 9 months, these big corporate cannabis behemoths are having to either reorganize, restructure, and find a way around it. And, you know, they're not getting the help they need.
Yeah, I tend to think that history is going to be so unkind to Nicole Elliott and her predecessor. We can't forget her. If I was to do the documentary on it, it would be called fucking up a wet dream, the destruction of the California cannabis industry. It's almost indefensible. I mean, you go from
I hear
the
you.
worldwide leader to this brain. I mean, you talk about people fleeing, they talk about people fleeing California for Texas. People were fleeing California and Oregon for Oklahoma, for parts where they needed people to
For
do this.
Vietnam, for yeah, like I have my buddies were like, "Yo, I'm out of here," and I'm like, "Oh, wait, heading to Oklahoma?" Like the rest? No, I'm going to Vietnam. I'm going, you know, so much of the brain drain, so much of our best genetics, so much of strain drain too. Have you noticed our strains aren't as compelling lately? That there's
Mm,
not as many hits. Think about it.
mm,
Think about it. Yeah, this all has repercussions. When it's not about the plan and it's more about the marketing, and you see all this, the new flower out, or this is what's hitting, nah, it's just the market has been impacted. We have to recognize that, then we have to reframe it, and so everybody understands, and then we restructure. This can still be the economic engine it was supposed to be, but you're gonna have to rework it, and that's part of what I do now is policy. I like to say, this ain't right. How can we make this better? How can we fix this? How can we make this first? Always thinking about everybody first. That's the Berkeley in me. I'm gonna think about everybody, and then I'm gonna think about this industry, and that's the entrepreneur in me. Like, you can be progressive and for profit.
What what did that transition look like from person who was in the legacy game to someone who's becoming a political force in Berkeley?
It has been a lot of similar skill sets that I use daily. There are a lot of obstacles I have to navigate. But I'm telling you, the parallels between the two worlds, I sometimes giggle. The feds are in politics just like they're in everything else. So, I see the occasional politician talking about the feds and sweating. I'm like, get used to it. You know what I'm saying? Get comfortable. No, I'm teasing halfway, but there are parallels. And, there is about who you can trust and who you can't, and loyalty is everything, and watch how people move. And, just because not all people are on the same team, just because they promise you they are, you've really got, and I've learned a lot quickly. The game, although, somebody with my background, we can adapt and figure out how to get in the machinations. We can move with it. Not everybody from this new life of mine can do what I used to do.
Hmm.
And I do take solace in that.
Do you have
Um,
a Oh, go ahead. Good luck.
well, I was just gonna just backtrack slightly for our audience and for myself. So I think, what we're talking about a lot of is um, the transition for to these legitimate businesses that you're required to have an operator's license, and there's a lot of bureaucracy that costs money, that makes it more expensive to do this business. You got to have a
Hmm.
legit storefront or whatnot. um and so there's these barriers for entrepreneurs, right? And I remember, I could be wrong, but from afar, I remember when California was doing their thing, there was a big voice for making space for communities of color that have historically been in the cannabis industry or drug distribution or whatnot. So, um, what were some of those other, like, just so the audience knows that we're talking about these regulations were set up so that it made it easier for big corporations to kind of take over and run shit, and at the same time just kind of squeeze out the diversity both ethnically and knowledge wise, right? I mean,
A
I'm
hundred
just
percent.
catching the audience up a little bit.
Yeah, no, that's a great point, Lev. And what you're talking about is something that I actually fought against and started my policy work, and that's how we even met. I wasn't eligible for the programs that would have benefited me as a young African American entrepreneur. I had never been incarcerated, I hadn't caught a case, and I didn't live in Oakland. I lived in Berkeley. And, that was what kept me from being able to take advantage of some of the opportunities. But those opportunities aren't what they really appeared to be to anybody inside the ecosystem of cannabis in the Bay Area. Like what they were asking these companies to do, especially if they're not big companies, we were to take on another smaller minority business. And then we were supposed to be able to support them through our infrastructure. Well, if you're starting a new startup and you have to start up 2 startups at once or 2 different businesses, what kind of pressure does that put on you? It's crazy, let me tell you, especially when you're punching up and you're a little disruptor in the game. So, we had to find our partners. We had to make these contractual agreements and support businesses when you're trying to build your own. Now, I was a smaller operator in this space. I wasn't the smallest, but I'm a smaller one. Now, think about, characters who were, just able to get the first part of this permitting together, or starting to do this. In Oakland, the program started after the state regulations came out and was like, hey, we're going to go ahead and do this. Well, I didn't budget for me starting a whole nother company with the company I had started. This was all, me and characters that believed in me, and a team of amazing people came together, to build what we built. And, I had politicians going on like, oh, we don't know who this guy is. We never heard of this guy. Well, yeah, you're not supposed to know who I am. You're a politician. I'm doing what I do. Why do you think you're supposed to know me? And I realized I didn't have any champions. I didn't have any advocates, but I just went and bought a building and said, hey, I'm going to make a cannabis community center. I followed the rules. I knew it was in the right area, that this was allowed. I knew it was in West Oakland. That's where I came up. And, I thought it was going to be beautiful for the community that I set up roots. But then, we started to find out, hey, you're going to have to go ahead and set up another business that's not yours, that I'm not supposed to own any part of, that we're going to go ahead and support both of these businesses at once. And at the same time, to get everything up to regulations and to build this out, these were multi-million-dollar build outs that, we get new regulation and new stuff. It was kind of like you were building the plane while you were flying it and taking it off. That's how the first guys were, that's how we were doing it. So, I saw a lot of us go down and
So
end
I'm
up working for those corporates.
so I'm
Go
I'm
ahead.
curious. So the second business that you were required to do, was that just to act as an interface between the semi-legal weed business with like federal banking and all that other shit? Is that, and so you were
Nah, bro.
required to like pay them, or what was it?
No, that is so I could get a permit. I had to make sure another business was operating in my space, or I paid for their space. So I bought a building and I had to give another company space in my spot
Another weed company.
to get my
Got it.
permit.
Okay, got
Right,
it.
right.
Well, here,
So you
let me-
think that would help the community, but none of these companies are still rocking.
right.
It was just not, yeah, like nobody's talking about how many of them are still around. And trust me, it's not many, because I know all these cats. You know, it's just, it wasn't sustainable, and it wasn't good business meeting good policy. And, truthfully, had that not happened, I probably wouldn't be doing the work I'm doing now, because I'm like, who does this? Who makes these? Yeah, I didn't even know how policy got to become law, or to become recommendations, or I had no idea how this all worked. But I knew somebody was like, who didn't have any business experience, who didn't know cannabis, who didn't know these streets, was trying to make bad policy. And I was like, man, this is horrible. So I started going to Oakland City Council meetings. I started being present. I started saying, yo, you're going to kill the industry. Don't do this. And what happened, and that's just not from this program. There was over regulation, there was over taxing, not enough support. The police support was lacking. Like, there was a lot of issues, but they're all real and they all affected bottom lines. And that's why you don't see any of the players who used to own dispensaries around here rocking, who used to own delivery services. Like, the OGs are no longer in those spaces. Corporate, cannabis is here, but that's not doing well either. We see how that's going. Nobody wants a dispensary now. I used to fight for it. I don't want it. I'm okay. I'm good.
Well,
But
that's
go ahead.
that's where you kind of at where I wanted to be at this point in the conversation. You started going to city council meetings. I dare say you were awakened to the potential of what happened here.
True.
How does that become you being a political player? You went to school, you ran for office. What's the sequence? How did you get there?
Great question. It started with this plant. The plant has been in my life for, since I was a kid, to plant policy in Oakland and fighting to find people who would believe in us and champions and advisors. And the mayor, there's two routes it's got to. Okay, I've lived in the same place in South Berkeley for the last 20 years now. And everybody knows me on my block. I love my community. If anyone needs anything, I'm there for them. Like, that's how I want to be known. That's how I hope that people know me. When it comes to this community where my family's at. Two things happened. One, a group of community members who knew my background, knew what I've done, said, "We want you to serve on this police accountability board because you're not scared of them. And we feel like you'll represent us." And the people that did it, these are octogenarians. These are all Berkeley radicals and revolutionaries who said, "You're up." He said, "You're in our community. It's your time. We need you." And, I don't always tell this story, but, um, you know, I didn't really want to commit. I was like, this isn't for me. I'm better in the shadows. And that's how I started. I stayed. And, the community group called Friends of Adeline, they said, "Hey, we believe in you. We're going to rock with you. And will you do this for your community?" So I said, "All right." But that wasn't the thing that got me. The mayor reached out, and the mayor said, "We see you," the mayor of Berkeley, who is now a state senator. His name's Jesse Araguin. Um, he's like, "We see you over in Oakland and putting in work, but you live in Berkeley. Why aren't you over here doing what you're doing over there?" And I said, "Man, I don't do this. I don't know what I'm doing. This is new to me. If you need me, like in my community, I'll be there for you guys, but this is all new." Well, he said, "Well, there's this thing called the Police Accountability Board, and I want you to serve on it." So I had the mayor and I had a community group asking me to do police work. And yeah, if it wasn't for the community group and for the mayor saying they believed that I was right for this, I wouldn't have done it. But I did. And it started during COVID. I think my first meeting, like I'm sitting out in my garage, I'm on Zoom. I'm not one of these cats. I didn't know how Zoom worked. I have my CBD joint. I got bad legs. I'm smoking my CBD joint. I get a call, like, "Hey, we can see you smoking." I'm like, "Oh, I'm messing up." First meeting, I was smoking, it was CBD. I do smoking and believe in it. I didn't know how Zoom worked. That was my first political meeting and experience. But at the same time, like, this is who I am. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not gonna pull punches. I got bad knees. I was aching, and yeah. So I was not trying to be a politician by any means. This stuff hit me, and yeah. Shout outs to Miss Ritchie. She's in her 90s, and she knocked on my door, and she told me, "You better go and serve this community." So after Police Accountability Board and my first bad meeting, I ended up chairing it for 2.5 years. So the guy before me was the state attorney of Northern California for President Biden. So he nominated me, and I took over the reins and I ran it for 2.5 years. At the same time, I became a planning commissioner. So I understood, how, and I didn't have a real understanding. So I had to learn how, important planning and, just this is wealth distribution out here. And, any one of these plots is big money. So I had to learn about this and learn about how it could best work for my community and all that good stuff. But I was in these meetings, y'all, and they kept telling me, oh, just go with what staff says, or, you're new at this and don't. And so they wanted me to follow, and I'm just not that guy. So I understood, in order to better address what I wanted to happen, how this world worked, all that, I went back to school, man. I got lucky. And I mean, immensely lucky. I met wonderful people from the Goldman School of Public Policy who said they saw a little something in me. I was chairing this other board for Berkeley Unified School District. It was a task force for reparations for African Americans in Berkeley. And yeah, it sounds like a long shot, right? You look at me like, you didn't get that done. But I did. I got it done.
Wait, it was me.
But we did. We passed these recommendations to the board. It was myself and now the new mayor of Berkeley. Her name's Mayor Adina Ishii. She was a newcomer too. And yeah, we got crazy progressive political stuff done where we're on the precipice of doing something that hasn't been done anywhere in the country. So that's how I like to disrupt, fellas. But that got me to the Goldman School of Public Policy, and that got me into the
where is
MPA
that, by the
program.
way? Let's make sure people know where that is.
That is Berkeley, okay? You guys have heard of the Harvard School of Government, the Kennedy School of Government, right, at Harvard? Have you heard of that?
Yeah.
Yeah, this one's better. Yeah, this is the number one school in the world, okay? And I do rep the Goldman School hard.
Is John Yoo in that department, or is he in the other school?
No, he's in the law school. He don't
right.
come around where, yeah.
So let me tell you,
He was a previous guest on the podcast, old friend of Danelle's.
Don't put us in the same studio. Don't put us in the same studio.
I have to tell you, Love.
He's at other Berkeley, bro.
I have to tell you, Love, that the day I went and had lunch with John Yoo, and I told him, I said, we had lunch in the deepest part of Chinatown. I said, I wanted to do that because I didn't want anybody to see me with you. But that day, when we were walking over there, I texted Chip. I said, I'm going to have lunch with John Yoo. He said, you mean the most hated man in Berkeley?
Yes, sir. I'm like, man, everybody's like, I don't know him like this. Like,
Chip, I want to go back to your experience with the planning. Are you still on the planning commission?
I am not on the planning commission.
Okay, yeah, I know.
Yeah, funny story. I can tell you about that too.
Well, I wanted to ask. So, I don't know if we talked about this before, but when I was living in San Francisco, I actually, I thought I could be a city planner to build sustainable green cities for the future.
Okay.
And then so I was doing some bicycle planning work. Well, that's what I got to eventually. But my first gig doing that was for the city of Berkeley. I was the assistant bicycle planner for the city of Berkeley, and this was like early 2000, like 2001. And it was basically like a paid internship because I wasn't union, so I could only work like 19 hours a week. And a lot of it was sitting in on these planning commission meetings. So I've seen that side of like, it's really sleepy. But then, it's also kind of intense because you are making these big decisions that don't seem big, that seem mundane in the clockworks of city operation and development. But like some of it is pretty heady stuff. And I appreciate that you stepped into this role, but I wonder, like, when you did the Zoom meetings, because that's the first time you're meeting some of these people. That's the first time you're involved in these meetings, which seems like a huge challenge, despite the other cultural barriers or whatnot. Was it easy? Do you think it was like, you seem like somebody that's the same in person as on Zoom, but I wonder if in a way it was kind of easier to do it from the comfort of your own home and like, not having to feel the pressure of the whole room, but to do it via Zoom. I'm just trying.
That's a great question.
As a media guy, I'm like trying to draw.
That's a great question. I don't. In my head, if I'm in the room, I'm home court, and that's just, I'm just having a good time with it. But in the meetings, you're very focused and succinct. So like the Zoom, you might get maybe 50% of who I am really. Like, you're not going to get the full tilt. experience, and that's probably easier for them than it is for me. Like, I don't mind making other people feel uncomfortable. I get comfortable when they're uncomfortable.
Right.
But yeah, I was the outlier on any of the boards or commissions that I was appointed to by Ben Bartlett, who, also he saw something in me and was like, yeah, this guy, he said, oh, you got on the PAB. I knew you would. But now I need you to be the chair and I need you to represent South Berkeley. And I said, all right, mission accepted. And, in my circles, when people are like, what are you doing? And I'm like, oh, yeah, I'm doing this police accountability thing. And what? And I'm like, yo, hold on. I oversee the police in Berkeley. And then everyone's like, what? And yeah, I make sure there's transparency, there's accountability, and that, not only they're doing their jobs, but they're making sure that everyone in the community feels safe. I work in the margins. I've always worked in the margins. So, that's where I'm checking the people that aren't in the big middle, but the ones that are the most vulnerable.
I feel like you might have some really good. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. No.
Well, I'm changing the subject in case you want to. If you
Okay.
have one
Well,
more.
I was going to just say, and maybe this is where you're going, like, if we zoom out a little bit, what are some of the current dynamics going on in Berkeley right now with the police,
Great question.
with the ICE, everything
Great
else?
question. That's super important. And I'm glad you brought it up. And shout out to the Police Accountability Board, and especially those members that just last week, we had two of the longest serving members resign under protest, because the city council, the city attorney, the police chief, and the union were not, living up to the charter, taking the work seriously, providing that, it was more accountability was deserved, but it was us going through the motions and making it look like there was accountability. I left a year ago, almost to the day of the Police Accountability Board, because I started my own business and I worked with the city of Berkeley. And I didn't want any conflicts of interest. I didn't want anyone to say, Chip's working the crowd and double dipping. And so, but the chair that came in after me, he's an attorney who used to go in front of the board and help people in the community. Great young man named Josh Cayetano. And I hope that he gets the support he needs. But right now, yeah, police accountability is crazy. Let me tell you, last city council meeting, they tried to reinstate tear gas. And I'm like, yo, after Minneapolis, like 2 weeks ago, are we still the city of Berkeley? Like, we got rid of tear gas in 2020 for a reason. And now, we have a couple council members who are like, wait a minute, we need our police state a little stronger. This is Berkeley. Everybody look out. So now they want drones, they want smoke, they want tear gas and all the other chemical dispersing agents that are not good for our community, especially when they're exercising their First Amendment rights. Berkeley is the home of the free speech movement. And unfortunately, more and more, we're not living up to that. And it's not. We're becoming, instead of a satellite or a guiding star of the community, the one that took on apartheid, the one that called out, mass killings and incarcerations. This was Berkeley. If we don't stop now, we're going to be a suburb of Oakland. And that's the realist.
Watching from your police accountability perspective, when you see what's going on in Minneapolis and obviously to a lesser degree in other cities, are you gleaning anything that you feel like police should be doing better? Are you gleaning anything that you see that's foreshadowing what's coming in the future?
So the first thing I'll say is shout out to the police in Minneapolis right now having to deal with a invasion in their streets. Now, I know the police don't like getting policed. I know that for a fact. But at the same time, they know how to work within their community. They have had horrible killings. They have come back and have created trust. They were a guiding star on what you want when it comes to police accountability and reframing the relationship between community and policing. And for that police state to come in and tear up all that good work, That's bad. That's bad. That's how, there's a reason people take the law in their own hands. It's because they don't trust the ones who are distributing the law. You can't trust those who are to those ICE officers and parole. I mean, and
Border Patrol.
Border Patrol. Thank you. Thank you. I mean, they got hit with an impossible situation. They have never done civilian law enforcement. That's not what they do. It's extremely it's just you put them in a situation where they don't know
It's
what they're doing on
different.
the ground.
Yeah.
It's 100% different. They're trained for specific actions that happen at their jobs. Now they have 47 days of training to go out there in these streets and deal with the public that doesn't want them there. Come on now. Like it's a recipe for more trauma, more killings, people, losing life and I don't know, your community, your trust. It's
Right.
gonna
And
take a decade.
I'm gonna say something that might get me canceled or get me I might receive some kind of rebuke, even if it's just from Danelle or you. But I've been thinking lately, like in the way that we protest against ICE, because what they're doing is all fucked up and they're poorly trained for it, and they're trying to do shit that frankly hasn't been done in American history, really. I mean, maybe I'm sure there was some anti-Asian prosecutions where they were throwing people out. I know there was that stuff in our more distant past, but like this mass deportation effort and the protesters, thank God they're there helping to slow things down. That's basically what they're doing, is slowing
100%.
it down. If ICE has to push their way out of a crowd or have a hard time entering their building and exiting their building, then you're keeping them from doing other nefarious shit. But one thing that bothers me a little bit, and I think is a little different than, like, say, older Berkeley politics or something. I mean,
Yeah.
people were radical back then. The Panthers, everybody knew what they were up against. But I feel like, calling out these ICE officers, in their faces as devils, you know, really kind of dehumanizing them too. I feel like it's hurting our cause more because those guys would switch if we didn't treat them like shit all the time. I mean, I don't know. The ones with a conscience, the ones that aren't just
Yeah.
racist,
Yeah. I mean, how
fucking
many January 6ers have now become ICE agents?
right.
Border Patrol agents.
Right.
And,
It's the worst of the worst for some of these people. And I'm not trying to say that they're good people or there's good